Alright, so before we jump into meiosis, let's briefly review mitosis and the process of mitosis. So remember, mitosis produces cells that are genetically identical to each other and keeps the chromosome number the same. And remember, we start off with interphase. And in interphase, that's when we have G1, S, and G2. G1, the cell lives its normal life. S is when it gets the signal to divide or replicate its DNA. In G2, it replicates the organelles. And then finally, it enters the mitosis. And in mitosis, we have prophase, prometaphase, which I actually considered part of prophase, which we're going to continue to do. Metaphase, anaphase, and then telophase and cytokinesis. So if you remember in prophase, which we're going to link together here, those two, prophase and prometaphase, a couple things happen. We have the spindle fibers forming, we have the DNA condensing to form chromosomes, we have the nuclear envelope degrading, and then eventually what happens is the spindle fibers attach to the kinetochores, or the middle of the chromosomes, and begin moving them to the middle. So those are all the things that happen in prophase. Okay? And then remember, in metaphase, at metaphase, the chromosomes are aligned in the equator, or the center part of the cell. And then finally, in anaphase, those chromosomes that are aligned in the middle of the cell get pulled apart. Remember, these are called sister chromatids. So in anaphase, we pull apart the sister chromatids. And then last but not least, we have telophase in cytokinesis. Telophase is essentially the reverse of prophase. You'll see the spindle fibers are going away. The nucleus is reforming. The DNA is going to go back to its decondensed form, which is called chromatin. And then last but not least, in cytokinesis, the cytoplasm is going to split into two. We're going to see many of these same events in meiosis, and also some additional ones that have to do with the chromosome arrangements, mostly. But again, it's important that you remember when the spindle fibers form and when the spindle fibers degrade. So we're going to see those stages again in meiosis. So, let's talk briefly before we're not going to look at the details of the process until in class, because it's ridiculous and we have to do it in class. Let's look at, in summary, how meiosis is different. First of all, in meiosis there are two divisions. Okay, the cell divides twice, okay? And they're aptly called meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Okay? Also, in meiosis, because there are two divisions, there are 4 cells produced. If you remember, in mitosis, there was only 2 cells produced per division. In meiosis, there are 4 cells produced. The third difference is the cells have half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell. So, if a cell is reproducing by meiosis, if the parent cell starts with 10, there'll be 4 cells produced, and we'll see how this is possible, each with half the number of chromosomes as the original cell, so they'll each have 5. Okay? And we'll see how that is tomorrow in class. Where if this was mitosis, not meiosis, you would have here the original cell with 10 chromosomes, it would produce only 2 cells, each with the same amount of chromosomes as the original parent. And the last and final difference is that cells in meiosis, okay, are genetically different. Okay. They're genetically different from the parent. So, like, these cells are genetically different from the parent. But also, most of the time, each of these cells are genetically different from each other as well. Okay? And we're definitely going to see how this comes about tomorrow in class. We're now going to go into some vocabulary words that are important to know to understand the process of meiosis. And the first vocabulary word is allele. Okay, and you heard that vocabulary word in 9th grade when you were learning about Mendelian genetics and the Punnett squares. So an allele, okay, is a version of a gene. So, for example, let's say you have the gene for eye color. Okay? Just to simplify it, there are 2 alleles for eye color. Big B, which is for brown eyes, and we'll learn next week sometime that that's dominant. And little b for blue eyes. Okay? So in this case, the gene is the eye color, and the two alleles are the brown allele, which is dominant, and the blue allele, which is recessive. Okay? That's not important right now, which one's dominant, which recessive, but it's sort of important for what we're going to do on the bottom. Okay? Then we have other words, which you also learned in 9th grade, but probably don't remember. When a cell is said to be diploid, okay, that means it has 2 copies of each gene. Okay? And when a cell is haploid, okay, that means it only has 1 copy of each gene. Okay. Now, if we take a look at the 2 cells on the bottom that they drew, okay, those black lines represent a chromosome, and then the blue letters represent an allele. So, like, for example, on this chromosome we have the big A allele, and on the chromosome over here we also have the big A allele. On this chromosome we have the little T allele, I said that could be like being tall, and then here we have the little T allele. One of these cells, which we're going to talk about in a second, is haploid, and the other is diploid. I'm going to tell you, because I can't ask you, because you're watching this video, that this cell here is the diploid one. That's not how you spell diploid, but whatever. I put the L in the wrong place. L goes there. Alright? The reason why this is diploid is it has 2 copies of the A gene, 2 copies of the T gene, and 2 copies of the B and R gene. Now notice in some cases they both have the same allele, the uppercase allele. And in the T gene, this one has the uppercase allele and this one has the lowercase allele. But they have 2 copies of each gene. It doesn't matter which allele, but this has 2 copies of the A gene. Maybe the A gene is for, I don't know, widow's peak, having a widow's peak in your hairline. Okay? And little a is for not having widow's peak in your hairline. And then they have 2 copies of the B gene. Maybe the B gene is the eye color. Okay? But this cell is diploid because it has 2 copies of each gene. Okay? When you get 2 copies of each gene, we have 2 copies of each gene in our normal cells. The reason why you have 2 copies of each gene is you get one from mom, and you get one from your father. Right? So in this case, this chromosome here could be from your mom, and the other one carrying the A would be from your dad. This cell here is haploid. Okay? The reason why it's haploid, okay, is it only contains 1 copy of each gene. It only has 1 copy of the A gene, 1 copy of the T gene, 1 copy of the B gene, and 1 copy of the R gene. Cells in meiosis, produced by meiosis, are haploid. So haploid cells are produced, these cells are produced by meiosis. Diploid cells, which have 2 copies of each gene, are produced by mitosis. There's one more word left to learn, and this word causes so much problems. I hate this word, okay? And the word is homologous chromosomes, okay? Homologous chromosomes are chromosomes that have the same genes on them. You get one from mom and one from dad. Diploid cells have pairs of homologous chromosomes. Okay, so if we take a look at here, at this organism here, or this diploid cell here, right? Let's say this has the A gene on it from mom. Okay? And then this is dad's chromosome. Maybe he's going to give you the little A gene. But these chromosomes are homologous to each other because they have the same genes on them. Okay, let's say the color, so same thing here, these 2 chromosomes. Let's say this chromosome, I don't know, has the big B gene and the little D gene, and this one has the little B gene and the big D gene. Okay? These chromosomes here are homologous to each other because they carry the same genes on them. Okay? You get 1 homologous chromosome, there's a homologous pair. One of those pair comes from mom. The other one comes from dad. I know this definition is going to cause problems. We're going to do an activity that will unproblemize it. I know it causes problems. Okay? If we go back to our cells on the previous slide, okay? If I call this chromosome here, chromosome 1, it is homologous with this chromosome over here. I'll also label it 1. Those are homologous to each other because they both have the A gene on them. Okay? Similarly, this T gene, which I'll call chromosome 2, is homologous to this one over here because it also has a T gene on it. Doesn't matter if it's big or little. It's the chromosome that's carrying the T gene. And then last but not least, the two down here, these two down here, are also homologous to each other because they're both carrying the same genes on them. They may be different alleles, okay, but they carry the same genes. Also keep in mind that this is a little bit oversimplified because chromosomes have like hundreds of genes on them and we're only showing like one or two. The last thing we gotta talk about is the sexual reproduction life cycle. And we're gonna talk about the sexual reproduction life cycle in humans. Okay. So, the female, okay, in her ovaries produces eggs. Okay? We have eggs in the ovaries. So here's an egg. Here are the eggs. Okay? These eggs are produced by meiosis in the ovaries of the female. We got the female over here. Okay? And then we have the sperms. We have the male. Female. The male. The male produces sperm. Okay? There are my spermies. Okay? In the testes of the male. Okay? And they're produced by meiosis. Okay? What that means is because they're produced by meiosis, okay, that means they have half the number of chromosomes as our normal cells. Our normal cells have 46. Our sperm and egg have 23. Just an interesting fact, females are born with all their eggs, and they sit in the ovaries, actually arrested in meiosis. They're arrested in prophase 1 of meiosis. Females are born with about 30,000 eggs. But they actually enter menopause before they ovulate all 30,000 eggs. But technically, you could ovulate 30,000 eggs in your lifetime. Probably not, but you're born with about 30,000 eggs. Men continuously make sperm. So, sperm are made in the testes continuously, in the testes. Now, what happens is somehow, I'll leave that up to your imagination, an egg, again, remember the egg has 23 chromosomes, okay, gets fertilized by one sperm, okay, that also has 23 chromosomes, okay, and then we recreate a cell with 46 chromosomes, and we've learned, I think, already when we were learning development, okay, that this cell is called a zygote, okay, it's getting half of the chromosomes from the female and half of the chromosomes from the male to produce a zygote, which has the 46 number of chromosomes. And then we've learned that through, like, differentiation, turning genes on and off, okay, and dividing by mitosis, okay, you're going to get, and this is a sad excuse, a baby. Differentiation, this means turning genes on and off in different cell types. And mitosis, getting more cells, dividing, you will get a baby. Okay? Remember, right, did I write zygote? This process, by the way, which I hope we all know, is called fertilization. Okay. And then, from the fertilization process, you get a zygote. Alright. Now, our goal in the next 4 days is to learn how egg and sperm are made by the process of meiosis, okay, in the ovaries of females and the testes of men. Okay? That is our goal over the next 3 days. Okay? And we're going to have notes using pictures, we're going to do an activity, and then we're going to have some practice problems. So that's the plan for the rest of the week. Answer the guided questions. Have a good night.